What's up, everyone? If you found this video, that means you went through the same pain I have to this point, trying to figure out how to install an Ohlins shock on a Generation 1, Generation 2 KTM Super Duke R. The challenge with these shocks is they use spacers on the bottom and on the top, and they're not captive. So you have to figure out how to keep them there while inserting the shock into place. So two things to know. Pretty common knowledge, but whenever you go to reinstall your rear shock onto your Super Duke, there are pressed in spacers at both ends that need to be squeezed back into place. What I mean by that is they're in the lower pivot and the upper pivot. There are these collars that press into place against the shock when everything's snug. When you pull the shock out, those collars stay out. The problem is it doesn't give you enough room to reinstall the shock. So you have to make yourself a tool similar to this. I found this just as easy. Get a long bolt that's narrower in diameter than the original bolt with two castle nuts on each end. And then what you do is, without the nuts on, you insert the bolt through the holes, then put the nuts on in this order, and then tighten these nuts away from each other. And what you're doing is you're pressing that collar back into, if it's the swing arm on the lower end, it's coming back out, and on the upper end, it's going back in. Now, for the reason you're here looking at this video, I figured out the trick to keep the collars in place, and I wanted to share it with you because I was pulling my hair out. What you want to do is, while the shock's out, and I should have done this before, is while the collars are on top around the shock, use safety wire and wire them in place around the shock. You need two safety wire loops, one on this side of the shock, one on this side of the shock. Don't do it on the top, because when you go to insert the shock up, you're going to want to have room for the top of the shock to go up in between the spacers. And then what you'll do is you'll cut the safety wire after you've started the insertion. What it does is it helps keep the collars together on both sides. So again, and again, I should have done this before I put it in here, but you're going to do one safety wire loop on this side, holding the collars to the shock, one safety loop wire on this side, holding the collar to the shock. For the lower, it's a little bit easier. So what you're going to do is, when you go to insert the Ohlins shock, you're actually going to put the lower end of the shock in first with the collars, and as it goes in, it'll keep them together. The upper is the one that's the pain in the butt. So you definitely, before you even do any of that, you want to safety wire the collars to the top end. You can leave them loose for the bottom. And don't forget to take off your chain guard at the bottom so that your swing arm can lower way down. And it also helps to take the chain off the sprocket to help lower it even further. Hope that helps.